My name is James Mangrum,
Mangrum.
Mangrum. I'm 74.
74, okay. And you were born here in Nashville?
I was born right off the square in Franklin, Tennessee, but I don't remember any of that. We moved to Nashville when I was about 2 years old. My father was a moonshiner, and his steel got busted up, and there was no money to be made in the country, so my understanding is they took what few belongings they had and moved to Nashville. So I've lived within 3 blocks of where we're sitting for about 72 years.
Wow, okay. That's amazing. So you grew up with the fort literally in your backyard?
A lot of people think it's funny. As a matter of fact, one of my older friends yesterday was making the comment, well, they call it Fort Negley, but there's not even a fort there. And I know he believes that because you didn't know there was a fort there until the early 2000s when they cleared out and made the fort visible. We played on the fort, but it was covered with so many vines and so much stuff that you didn't realize there was a fort actually there. I was kind of surprised when they cleared out and saw all the walls that actually still exist. So yes, the fort has been part of my life. It was my income. When I was real young, I would go up and go under the bleachers in the morning after the softball games and find the change that people left on the ground and fell out of their pockets.
Oh, amazing.
So that was kind of an income when I was younger.
Did you know what the fort was for when you were a kid?
Yes. Yes. Always was aware of the fort. My mother told us when we played at the fort, we were walking on dead people. Be careful. And the KKK met on top of the fort, and if we saw them, get away. There used to be white painted rocks around the fort, and she said they were probably markers for graves. They no longer exist that I know of. They were scattered out around different areas of the fort. I know that they've done ground penetrating radar and discovered that yes, there are probably a lot of bodies buried. I don't know how close they'll get to uncovering some of them with what they're doing up there now, but there are, or at least were, plenty of burial sites on the fort grounds. Luckily, that's why we don't have high-rise development there now, is because they brought a halt to that when they found out it was hollowed ground, as they called it.
Did you, you mentioned that the Ku Klux Klan used to meet up there. Did you ever personally have any experience with that? Did you ever see them?
The KKK? No. No, we were just told to be aware that there are references. Tracy at the Visitor Center has looked it up, and there are references on up into the 1950s of them meeting at the top of the hill and burning crosses. I never did see it. We never saw anything that looked to be like a meeting. That was usually more, you just were careful up there because you never knew quite who you were going to run into on top of the fort.
Sure. What was your mom afraid of with the Ku Klux Klan? Did she ever say?
Just the fact that they were prone to violence. If we interrupted them or insulted them or made them think that we were less than favorable, that we might not be held in high regard by them. So they were just an image to us, an image to my mama just knew from the ladies who lived here in the neighborhood, much older than her, and everything was carried down from them. So everybody followed basically the same guidelines. A lot of people don't know it, but the fort helped construct a lot of the backyard barbecue grills and different housing around here, people would go up there and take the fort apart and bring the parts of it, be they wood or rocks, and assemble things out of them.
Did you ever see anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. Down the street from where we sit right now, one block on the corner, I think the last big backyard barbecue grill that I didn't see it built, but it was built out of the limestone that looked very much like it came from the fort. And from what I understood, people were very, nobody hid it. People just went up there and took it because the fort was in disrepair, and it was just like your old-timey Home Depot. If you needed something, you went up there and took it.
Oh. And then you remember when they cleared out the fort and they put in the visitor center.
I remember that very well, and that's about the time that I became aware of how much of the actual walls were up there. When they cut down all the trees after they built the visitor center, I don't know if you remember that or not, but that was probably 10, 12 years ago. They scalped the hill up there and took down a lot of trees. And that's when it became really visible to people. But yes, I've made use of it. We played, I go up there every day now and walk, and that's for safety, because the streets around here, if you walk on them, can be right dangerous. I'm not comfortable walking around here, not from people, but from traffic.
Yeah.
So I had the need to go exercise for health, for blood pressure, and found out, I thought, okay, the fort is paved, and so I go up there and make a couple of laps every morning and usually pick up whatever I see that needs picking up and put it in the trash. Been doing that about 5 years. Nobody asked me to do any of it. It was just my way of paying back for using the fort.
I love that.
There was a huge homeless encampment up there. I don't know if you'll remember that. I don't know how long you've been around or associated
19
close enough.
years.
Well, there was a huge homeless encampment up there. They had their own nicely done sign. It was called Camp Eagle Nest. They claimed there was an eagle nesting up there. I didn't see the eagle. There is a large hawk up there to this day that controls the top of the hill and picks up rabbits and other small animals that are on the fort. But yes, after the softball fields left, they put in the Nashville Sound Stadium. They deposited 6 to 8 feet of dirt over the whole premise where the fort, not the fort, but the stadium sat, and leveled that all out. So I watched the Nashville Sounds ballpark being built, and I watched it being taken down.
Did you ever hear anything from any of the workers that were working on either the building or the taking down of the stadium? Did they ever talk about anything they found? Or
not those workers. I helped rebuild the walls at the fort back during the pandemic. They could not hire help, and they were in the process of doing what's called the Sallyport wall up there. And I just started talking to them and started helping and learning. The learning was the real good part about it, just how we split the rocks to make them fit. I'd never done that before. I always worked with metal. Doing the rock work was just a new experience for me and gave me a whole different outlook on what it must have been like when they originally built the fort. We had powerful equipment to help us move the rocks, The splitting of the rocks is done by hand, but the moving of the rocks, we always had heavy equipment to help us pick up and move and locate the rocks where we wanted them. It couldn't have been anywhere near that. I still can't imagine how they got everything in place at the fort when it was originally built.
Can you describe the splitting process? What is that like?
If you want to split a stone, and there are plenty of them out by the edge of the driveway, it basically involves just etching a line. And then we had power equipment. We drilled a line of holes in the rock with a masonry bit in a drill, and then just drove wedges in there. And you tapped them evenly and across, and it was amazing how the rock split so smoothly. I never really learned the technique, but the guys who did it for a living looked at the rock and said, you have to do this according to the way the grain is running. Mm-hmm. And I have never quite picked up on that yet, but I did help split the stone, and I was always kind of proud of that accomplishment.
Yeah.
We built two. When I helped, most of my help was down in the parking lot in front of the visitor center. That's where all the equipment was located, and that's where we split most of the stone, and that's where I did most of the work, was down there. I did help rebuild one of the big columns at the old city cemetery that somebody ran through and knocked apart.
I remember that.
Well, it's happened so many times that you remember one time. It's happened plenty. That same column has been taken apart and put back together through the years. The last time that I helped build it, me and a fellow named Randy who worked for the tradesman group, we rebuilt that column probably over a period of about 4 or 5 days. He had no helper. They couldn't find anybody who was willing to work during the pandemic. And I helped Randy put that column back together, and I check on it very often to see if anybody has knocked it back down. And as of this day, it still stands like we rebuilt it, and we did a fine job of it.
So the last time we spoke, you said that when you were a younger man, you worked with a pharmacy delivering things from the drugstore to people?
I did. It was called Lehman Drug Company. The building still exists. It was converted into a recording studio. Not a profitable venture from my understanding. And the last I knew, the building and the property beside it was up for sale. But we delivered to the Bass Street community. I did not personally deliver there, and I've told you the reason why.
Could you repeat it, please?
Well, the reason why was because I was white and the Bass Street community was black. And there was more or less a understood code that we didn't go around the Bass Street community, and they didn't come through this community, which was all white at that time. A lot of people who move in around here today tell me I love this community because it's always been integrated, never been segregated, and I laugh at them. They're only going back 10 or 15 years, which was true. But in the 50s and the 60s, this neighborhood where we sit was pretty much 100% white. You had outlying streets even then that did have black residences, but what is called Wedgewood Houston proper was not integrated. Mm-hmm. I never had any bad experiences around the Bass Street community, but if we went through there, it was either on bicycles or cars. Most of the time cars. We didn't ride our bikes through there much. But it was just understood that if you went through there walking, you would be yelled at and told to get away. And if they came through this neighborhood, we did the same thing. nothing I'm proud of, but nothing that can be denied because it did happen, and it is true.
Yeah. Do you have any other memories of segregation?
Oh, I have memories of segregation that I remember going to the old Nashville General Hospital, and they had separate bathrooms, and the signs read "for colored only," or would just have a sign up above the door, "colored." And as a child, which I was very small, it always made you wonder why. Was there something different about the anatomy of the people? As silly as that sounds, you still kind of wondered why there were separate bathrooms. But if you ask an adult, they would say it's because they're black. They have their own, they don't use ours. I remember my grandfather had a garage not far from here on McCann Street. The building still exists. And next door to his garage was a restaurant cafe. And on the front door of that building, there was a sign that I was totally puzzled by because it said "for colored only." And at the same time, my father would go over there and get lunch. So I had a little bit of confusion about what that was all about. I have to laugh because you think back to how accepted it was and how it was just taken for granted. And it's because it was taken for granted. What somebody told you is what you did and what you believed. And it took a few years to get my eyes open. I'm not a big proponent of going out and trying to preach to people about equality, but when I think back to the days where it was so unequal, I can see where it caused resentment, and people my age a lot still have that resentment. Some grow out of it and some grow worse. And at this moment, I'm calling for a break because I'm going down the hall.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Sounds good.
We're doing...
Right. Should be live. Not live, just recording.
The picture I'm talking about, that's me behind the counter, and the picture I'm talking about looks like that, and I have a child sitting on the ice cream box in front of me.
How old were you right about there?
This was done, I must have been maybe 17, 18.
Wow.
And the child's father, William, who I worked with, the child looked very wide-eyed. And William told me later I was the first white person that had ever held him. Oh. He was born at Meharry, and it was just kind of a running joke. William told me that the child didn't know what to think of me, that he kept staring because I was white.
Was it common?
I wish I could find that. It's a good picture, and the article he wrote about it, it's one of the first things he posted on there. It gave a good indication of the time. He did take liberties and say that people joined hands to protect the building, which was not really true. But a lot of the older people did call up and offer to come stand in front of the drugstore to keep them from burning it down. And that was one of the moments in my life when I realized that people I thought I was better than were actually much better than me. And I just hoped to be as good as they were. Not all of the people, but quite a few of them.
Mm. And that was your first realization or awareness of the civil rights movement?
We had been through the Watts riots, I think, in California. When Martin Luther King got killed, I think it was 1968. I'm not sure. I would have been about 16. And a lot of Nashville burned at that time, usually in the neighborhood, in the black neighborhoods. And people were really worried that was going to happen to Lehman Drug Company. It had been there forever and had been taking care of that whole community forever. And the people knew us very well. They knew Doc a lot better than me. My nickname, and what most people called me, and I never took offense, my nickname was White Boy. So it was White Boy this and White Boy that. It wasn't really, it was, what it gave to me was an understanding that people could be concerned about you, even though at one time you may have felt something totally different toward them. Mm. And the sincerity of the fact that they offered to come and actually, which people were always standing in front of the drugstore. It was just, there was a huge metal mailbox that people put mail in. Usually people sat on top of it. And there were usually people around the front of the drugstore anyway. We had a public telephone that people used. So stretching it out to say people surrounded the building, that's not true, but they were there, and there were people offering to protect the building to keep harm from coming to us or the building. And that
black
was
people.
I'm sorry.
Black people.
Oh, all black people. That we always laugh, Doc and I, because many days the only white people we saw were each other. We would laugh about that because when you were there, and I was there for 25 years, you grow to be a part of the community, and people quit thinking of you in color terms. Doc and I realized that because they talked to us as though we were black, and we usually took whatever they said as though we were black. It's kind of hard to believe, but that it was not so much the color, it was just the environment that you were in and the people you were around, and you began to accept their feelings and emotions as your own. So that was one of my moments of realizing that a lot of the stuff I had believed and heard for so many years was not exactly true.
Have you ever had conversations about this with other white people?
I have, with people like Tracy at Fort Negley, people who are genuinely concerned and know about some of the history I have in the black community, talk about it, and I have talked about it quite a bit. It's not something I'm greatly proud of. It's just something that is kind of, there are a few things that happen to you in life that are eye-openers, and this particular instance where we did have a fear that not so much we would be harmed, but maybe the building would get set on fire. And then when you had people offering to come and physically offer to keep that from happening, it was a good moment. It's a good memory for me. I don't even remember the exact people who called and said that. It was not just one or two, but they had their own reason for it. I mean, we were serving the community. We were the local drugstore / ice cream shop / hardware store, just all the stuff that we needed to be a community store, and they didn't want to lose it. Plus, I think they had some affection for Doc and maybe a little bit of affection for me. One of the things I remember is I sold a lot of big bottles of cocoa butter lotion, which was, I would get inexpensive large bottles, and the people would use it to treat what they called ashy skin, especially in the summertime. And I was known for keeping a lot of that particular product, and so everybody bought that. I even use it myself today on my dry skin, my arms, when they get ashy, as they would say around the drugstore. The Bass Street community itself, I remember it. I don't remember it in a real pleasant light because we didn't spend any time there. If we went through there, we just went through there going from point A to B. We didn't stop. We didn't socialize. We just went through there.
What did it look like when you were going through there?
It actually, the part of it that was built up on the side of Fort Negley and extended quite a ways up onto the hill, put you in the mind of an old rural community. There was nothing fancy. There were no fancy homes. They were very livable homes, but nothing that really compared to what was around it outside of that one particular. Now, one side of Ridley Boulevard, which is the street that runs around the fort, it's now called Fort Negley Boulevard, I think. Back then it was Ridley. And what was on the other side of Ridley Boulevard were nicer homes, and they were lived in by white people. That all went away when they brought the interstate through. The Bass Street community, to me, it always put me in the mind of the country, not the city. And I wouldn't be surprised through archaeological digs or whatnot, you would find up onto the hillside remnants of outhouses. I don't think they had sewage. I'm not sure they had electricity. I really don't know.
Most did not.
We sold a lot of candles. A lot of people still lit with candles, so I don't doubt that we sent candles up there. I don't remember it specifically. I thought of it not in pleasant terms. I mean, there was a name for it that everybody used, and it unfortunately was the N-word town. And people used that to describe it throughout my childhood. But it was clearly a poor. The shining example, I guess, up there would have to be the Bass Street Church. I don't remember it being magnificent, but it was built, I call, professionally. A lot of the homes looked like they were built by a handyman. And the outstructures, the old buildings up on the side of the hill, looked like they were put up for purpose, not for to be neat or pretty.
Do you remember what the church looked like?
I'm sorry?
Do you remember what the church looked like?
I do not, other than I remember it was easily identifiable as a church. I remember it being the most kept up part of the neighborhood. I cannot remember specific. I just don't have it in me to bring that up. I was all, we had members in the community around the drugstore, which was basically 4 blocks from the Bass Street community. There were people there who went to Bass Street Baptist Church. But at that time, I never really paid attention to the church itself, other than to know that it was there. I don't have a real good visualization of that neighborhood where the street turned, where everything was located. It's just been too long ago, and like I say, I didn't deliver myself up there. I may have on occasion when I had a car, but by and large, a fellow I worked with named Dennis, whom I've spoken to recently, just went to his 70th birthday party. Dennis delivered for us up on the Bass Street community, but he has no real recollections of it. He knows exactly what I'm talking about, but he didn't pay any more attention to it, other than it was just a place for him to ride the bicycle and take sacks full of whatever people ordered up there to the hill.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't remember it he doesn't look at it any kind of historic context. He just remembers it being a place that he delivered to. Mm-hmm. Nothing really stood out. No, I was hoping some names would come from Dennis, but he couldn't remember the names of any of the people that lived up in that area. And the community itself was not just on Bass Street, it was up Ridley Boulevard. Mm-hmm. And I think Tracy has told me they don't have real records of houses that were built on the Fort property on Ridley Boulevard, but they were. And I don't know if they got mail service. I don't know if they had legitimate addresses. Actually, I've probably learned more from you and Tracy than I ever knew about it firsthand.
You're definitely right that even on Ridley, there were some homes that were built on the fort's property, because I've seen some aerials that show that.
Oh, I know they were, because I saw them many, many times. We delivered to those homes. Mm-hmm. We delivered to those homes and the ones that were on Bass Street proper.
Do you remember how far out Bass Street extended?
I do not. Okay. I think I asked you when I was showing you the poke salad.
We're all still trying to figure out the exact borders of what the Bass Street neighborhood was. We may never find out.
I do not. I remember coming around the fort in the turn around the fort where the Science Museum is now, and the houses being on the right-hand side as you headed toward 4th Avenue. I just remember houses. I remember the church. As far as where the exact street was, where I just don't, and I won't throw anything out that I'm not sure of.
Do you remember the Cameron School?
Cameron? Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%. Yes, I knew many, many people who went to Cameron School. Many, many.
And where did you attend?
I went to Howard High School, which is still in existence. It's where you go get your tags for your car and go get married, and where they have the property tax offices. It's a government building. It's on 2nd Avenue. I went there from 7th through 11th. They closed it in 1969. That was the last graduating class. I graduated 2 blocks from here on Rains Avenue at Central High School in 1970.
And then for elementary school, you said you were at the fall school?
I went to fall school from 1st through 6th grade. I think the first year I was there, it was not integrated. I think the second year it was integrated. And that was an eye-opener for us, because by and large we had not been in close contact with or dealt with black children. And I was a prolific reader. I could read before I went to kindergarten. And I loved reading. So I taught my own reading class starting, I think, in the 2nd grade. And almost every pupil that I went into the cloakroom with and taught how to read was black. And they came from schools that did not have books. So they had never learned to read. And I was their peer. I was not their teacher. So it wasn't done in a professional manner. It was just me saying, you just read that, now read it again. And it worked. Each year I would teach some of the beginning students and get them where the teacher, this was not done out of prejudice, it was done out of the teacher had students who had been exposed to books, who had been taught to read early, and then she would have 6 or 7 students who had not had books. I didn't know that until way later in life, that when they came to fall school, the schools they had left a lot of times did not have books or just had a few. We pretty much had one book for every student, not in the best condition most of the time, but we did have books. But my understanding was a lot of times they had one book for the teacher and nothing else. So I did start teaching reading, and I became a lot more, I truthfully, when I first started it, it was easy for me, so I find it hard to believe that other children my age couldn't read, though I was probably not the kindest teacher they ever had. But I do think they listened and learned. Another feather in my cap.
Do you remember? I mean, you must have been so young, but do you remember like the Hattie Cotton bombing?
Yes. Oh, I was selling newspapers at that time. Oh, I was selling newspapers and sold newspapers with that right on the front page. Yes, I remember it.
Do you remember what you thought of that at that time? Like, what was the general impression?
You know, it just didn't mean that much to me. It didn't happen on my street. It happened, it may have been in another whole city, because I didn't know where it was. It was on the other side of town. It did not really make that big of an impression on me. I could never imagine it happening to us at fall school. As harsh as it sounds, a lot of times for me, the only thing that made an impression was whether it helped me sell newspapers or not.
Sure.
When JFK got assassinated, I did a bang-up business selling newspapers that day, and they put out extra editions. Now, I was very saddened by that, by JFK. I knew who he was. He's the first president I really remember giving speeches, and he was somebody that I at least was aware of. And when I talk about Hattie Cotton, it's because it's like asking me about something that happened on the moon. It was just, I was just a child, and that was just a far off event that didn't affect me. Now, I don't make light of it. I know how horrible it was, but I also know the way people thought at that time. It was not that unusual when you heard about it. I mean, there were just people that thought that was, for whatever reason, something that they needed to do. You see examples of it today when people go shooting up synagogues or any school. I mean, you just I can't put myself in a frame of mind to think, how would I ever get this way to think along those lines to make me do an act like that? And it still escapes me. I'm appalled just about any time you turn on the news at what people can do to harm one another based on beliefs that I just don't understand.
Yeah. Were your parents more worried?
Were my parents
more worried after the bombing of Hattie Cotton, or was it not?
I don't think so. I think that they felt like this is what happens on the black side of town. I don't remember my parents being worried about us going to fall school. Fall school was a refuge for me. We lived in a shack with no heat, no food. So when I went to fall school, I was in a warm building with a roof over my head, and we got fed lunch that I can remember to this day.
What kinds of things did they feed you? What kinds of food was it?
delicious, no matter what it was. The only thing that I could not eat was spinach. I would eat anything presented to me. I ate other people's helpings that they didn't want. But spinach was not one of the things that I could tolerate. Bowls of chili, grilled cheese sandwiches, salmon croquettes, the ladies called them. I just remember the cafeteria being the most wonderful place in the world. They had all that food. And when I sold newspapers, I bought extra food. When it got found out that I was buying an extra carton of milk and an apple with my newspaper earnings, they told my mother they were cutting us off of free lunches for children because I had money. This is true. So I had to start giving my money to my friends and get them to buy me the extra milk and the extra apple with my money. They were that strict that they were going to cut off not just me, but my brothers and sisters from free lunch. Sounds kind of harsh, but it is true.
Yeah, I believe it.
You have to.
Yeah.
You're my captive audience. No, we didn't know. Well, I told you, Fort Negley was just kind of a name back then. It was a name only because it was thick with trees. It was thick with brush. It was thick with vine. So it existed, but in your mind, it was just a hill that went up. I had a dream when I was really small that Fort Negley turned into a volcano and blew when I was walking to fall school. And that is the oldest dream that I have in my memory bank, because Fort Negley was not covered with a fort. It was just the name of that big hill up there. Mm-hmm. But I remember thinking in that dream that Fort Negley turned into a volcano. I don't know if I would include all that. People be wondering about who you're talking to.
I think it's a really apt metaphor for this town and the way that we think of Fort Negley.
Okay, what we were talking about, I never thought about that, but 65 did away with all of that community up around, because, you know, in front of the visitor center on the other side of Chestnut Street, that was a whole suburb back there.
Yeah.
And it was white, and it was considered high class for this neighborhood. They were all homes that looked basically the same, but there were row after row. I don't remember we used to walk up there because we liked walking where the rich people were. And I doubt they were rich, but they were richer than us. But it did away with all of that. But I never thought about the fact that when 40 came through, you used to take 3rd Avenue South all the way into town. And now it stops at Lafayette Street.
Yep.
And I never really thought about that. But you've got the bridge work going over, and that's 40. Mm-hmm. See, I can't even, I don't know the interstates, and I've lived here all my life.
Well, when the interstates came in, did it change life for you?
The interstates came in about the time that I got my driver's license. And a lot of the interstates weren't completed. And I was afraid to get on the interstates, not out of fear, but because I had really old, raggedy cars. And to get on the interstate, you had to be doing 55, 60 mile an hour. And most of my cars, they just weren't intended for that. It did not change life for me that I remember in any kind of way. And I avoided interstates. I avoided them like the plague. I had to be in the car with somebody else on the interstate. Now, nowadays, with my wife navigating, I'll get on the interstates and drive from here to California. But I need that navigator. I'm not comfortable on the interstate without somebody who is good at it, and she's good at it. So I know the interstates didn't change anything for me other than just I've always been fascinated with the building of and the de-building of, the destruction of different things. Like Greer Stadium, I watched them go in and dig it out, fill it up with dirt, build it brand new. Then I watched them tear it all down. There are houses around here that I watched being built brand new and then torn down to make way for some of the tall skinnies. But I do have a fascination. I love to watch stuff being built, and then when you watch them being torn down and realize, okay, that's going away, it's not coming back. It used to, I have told people many times, I can walk out this front door sometimes in the morning and look and be saddened by what I see. Then I can walk out the next day and be happy about it because I know that I preached it into existence. I just really bullied people into saying, you all have to vote for this dense residential zoning or we'll lose the neighborhood. And we were losing the neighborhood. There were vacant lots, there were burned down houses, it was bad. And I wasn't doing it for profit or anything. It was my neighborhood. I did it but I thought that developers would come in and build duplexes side by side. And it's not what developers did. I mean, the first proposal they put out on Martin Street for that, at the corner of Martin and Merritt down there, just blew my mind when they wanted to build something that large. I thought developers were crazy. I just thought nobody's going to move over here. Nobody's going to want to come over here and take part in a coffee shop. Who in the hell needs a coffee shop? I have been proven wrong over and over and over again. But some days I'm really happy that the neighborhood survived, but it survived, but it's changed so dramatically. Like the people next door were here when I moved in. They haven't changed, and they won't move. They said they weren't moving until I moved, and I said, well, I'm not moving until you all move. So we've been doing, they get harassed wanting to buy their property. I get harassed wanting to buy this property all the time. So sometimes I can laugh about it, but sometimes there's a certain sadness. There's only one person around here who's been here what I call a long time. His name's Joey. He lives on Pillow, and he's probably 65 or better, and he's lived in that one house since he was born. It was his family home. Besides him, there's nobody else that's been out here over, the people next door been here 30, 35 years, and they're probably, that I can think of, they're the longest living family out here besides me. I don't know if it doesn't make me anything special. I just don't want to move.
Nor should you have to. Mm-hmm. So, can we talk dates? I'm trying to get like a good sense of, like after the highways moved in, sort of like what is the timeline in terms of the change in this neighborhood?
I'm going to go slow because I have to try to associate something with dates. When I bought, the first house I bought was on Pillow Street, which is right behind you, one block over. I was in my 20s, so that would have been, interest rate on my first house was 14%, and I thought that was wonderful.
Wow.
The first house I bought, I paid $13,000 for. I sold it for like 28, and I thought I was J. Paul Getty. Timelines, I'm trying to get it together. Let's see, I was born in 52, 57, 67, no, 77. I bought the first house on Pillow in the mid to late 70s. And people at that time were not fixing houses up around here. 10 years later, people started buying houses in the neighborhood and flipping them. They would buy a house like the next door neighbor here. They'd buy a house like that, usually in disrepair, and put money in it, and then turn a profit of sometimes $20,000, which was big money. And they did that up until 2008, when we had the great bust. And then you had houses around here that wouldn't sell. You had some houses around here that people had built brand new while the economy was booming, and they had them on the market, they wouldn't sell. So you saw a lot of houses around here that were built to be sold, and they would change the sign to for rent. And that was in 2008, after 2008. But I'll say before 2008, you mostly had flippers. That was the term everybody used. You know, I flip houses. I want to buy your house and flip it. And that meant they were going to put some money in it and sell it and make a good profit and move on to something else. But that stopped after 2008. When people came out here, they started with the tall skinnies. You can go back and find out when the overall zoning changed for Wedgewood Houston, which I voted and talked to other people into doing. When we voted that change in, not long after that is when you started having the big development of the neighborhood. And it continues, of course, to this day. So if that helps the timeline at all.
Yeah.